No matter how many times I hear it tonight, that song right there is always going to get me jacked up to talk some hockey. And tonight, well, we're talking with Dave McCarthy. We're talking about the Maple Leafs. And I said it to him before we came on. Last year, before the season, I had some bold opinions, and Dave set me straight on a couple of them, and he was absolutely bang on. So, Dave, welcome back, man. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Good to be back. What did I set you straight on?
So a couple of things last year. I was very bullish on what Matthew Knies will be able to do, obviously, with his first full season. I just thought he was going to come in guns blazing. He looked like a Gronk in the playoffs, and then he comes in last season. Not that he had a bad year, but you're coming to the NHL, cutting your teeth, learning the season. I said he was going to be blowing the doors off. No one's going to be able to handle this guy. He was going to be basically a Gronk for the Leafs. And you're like, whoa. Let's let the guy play and figure out what's happening there. And also the goaltending situation. I was ready to anoint Woll right away. I didn't have any eyes for Samsonov. Turns out they needed everybody, all hands on deck to get it done. So You had me at those points. And yeah, sometimes you got to pay attention.
Yeah, it's no indictment on you at all, man. It's just I've done this a long time. You've been around, you've talked to people, and like you understand that a guy who comes up in the playoffs, gets a taste, looks good, you think, oh well, he's just going to hit the ground running and away he's going to go. And for most guys, that's just not how it works. And that you can catch lightning in a bottle for 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 games in the playoffs. So playing 82 games, man,
it's a grind, baby.
It's a grind, especially for a guy like Matt Knies who hadn't played really more than at max 40 games during a season coming from college hockey.
That's about 38 games plus maybe playoffs on a long run if you're lucky.
Right. It's an adjustment. It is an adjustment coming to the NHL and playing that type of rigorous hockey day in, day out, and being a contributing player and not a guy who just, puts his name on the lineup card and gets a GP beside his name in his career stats. It's an adjustment. And for Joe Woll, look, I still have the same questions this year, quite honestly, that I did last year at this time. Can he stay healthy? Now, last year, there was the insurance policy of Ilya Samsonov. This year, they brought in Anthony Stolarz, who in limited games last year, 30, 35 games, played pretty well. Can he handle more of a workload? Maybe. But Joe Woll has never shown himself to be a guy that can play 55 plus games in a year. And if you want to be considered a starter in this league, not a platoon guy, but like a starter,
yep,
you've got to show the ability to play 55 games. And as I always say, the best ability, can you finish my statement? The best ability is availability, right?
Yeah, there it is. All right.
Yeah, you got it. And that's a skill too. And so when Joe Woll's in the lineup and he's playing, I'm excited about the guy. He looks like he's a really good goalie, but you haven't been able to rely on him day in, day out yet at any point in his NHL career. And he's 26 now. So The time is now for him to show that he can play a full season, because the Leafs have, they're depending on him really. Like Anthony Stolarz is a good goalie, but if you get a few pops into Brad Treliving and you take all the mics away and you ask him for his honest opinion, and you'd say, well, what do you want to happen out of your goaltending? He'd say, I'd like Joe Woll to play 55 games, not Anthony Stolarz to play 55 games. So that'll be the challenge for Joe this season.
Definitely. We'll talk more about the goalies here down the list. Obviously, everyone sees the sandwich board. We'll get to it as we go. The Leaf summer for you this summer here was what? What would you, basically, if you had a word or a sentence on the summer for the Leafs, it's what?
It was, one word is difficult, but they made, put it this way. You don't have to have Brad Treliving say out loud what type of style he would like to see his team play, what type of hockey he would like to see his team play. You just have to watch the moves that he's made. And I think this summer has articulated it, even if he himself hasn't come straight out and said it. He outfitted the D very differently than it had been in years past. Bringing in Chris Tanev is a guy they've had interest in for quite some time. a guy that hopefully will be able to provide Morgan Riley with a partner, the likes of which that, quite honestly, I don't know if he's really had yet in his NHL career.
Don't think so. He's had the laundry list of guys, but not the guy that Chris Tanev can be potentially. The chemistry might not be there, but potentially.
Well, we'll see. We'll see on paper, right? In reality, we'll see if it's a fit. I mean, really, I think at this point, if you had to say who was Morgan Riley's best partner in his NHL career, it's probably Ron Hainsey.
Right? Or his short stint with Luke Schenn in the playoffs.
Or Luke Schenn in the playoffs, exactly. So it's been a long time since he's found a guy that he could rely on. So they bring in Chris Tanev. He's not a guy that's going to bring people out of their seats, but he's a guy that's going to make the opposing coach have some pause, right? And that's really what it's all about, because he's mean, nasty, he's difficult to play against, and hopefully he provides a steadying presence for Morgan Riley. Bring in Oliver Ekman-Larsson, guy who played a legit role on a team that won a Stanley Cup. What it's shown is that they're trying to get away from inexperience on the blue line.
Yep.
Right? Like no more Travis Dermott. And I love Travis. Don't get me wrong. I love Travis.
I know where you're trying to go with this. I get it.
At the time in his career, he had limited experience.
Yep.
You know, and a whole host of guys that have come through bottom of that lineup that don't have a lot of experience. You look at teams that win, not very many of them have inexperience on the back end. They just don't.
That's the very truth. Yes.
And so he's gone with a guy in Oliver Ekman-Larsson who, is his ceiling high? No. You know what he is, though. And you're asking him, can you give me 14 to 17 minutes reliably every night? Can you help out on the second power play unit every now and again? If Morgan's out or whatever, you can fill in on the first unit. There's versatility there, but you know what you're getting, and you're not going into the season hoping this guy is going to be able to deliver me whatever I said, 14 to 17 minutes.
Yeah, the expectation like they had last year for John Klingberg, they wanted a guy who could move the puck and play the minutes, and obviously the health wasn't there. I look at Oliver Ekman-Larsson and say also it's going to help the transition game. Right. Another guy that can move that puck out for them as well.
Right. So that's what they're looking for. They've gone away from the youth and inexperience on the back end. They brought in some nasty pieces of business, and hopefully you make Morgan Riley a better player, giving him a solid, reliable partner. Beyond that, bringing in Max Pacioretty, I don't see why not. Like, it's going to be an equitable deal for the Maple Leafs. It's not going to cost them an arm and a leg. And this is a guy who's finally had, and here's another thing that people don't understand, but he was all frisky last year when he went into Washington. Oh, this guy's going to just, take the league by, no, that's not how it works. When you come off a summer of injury and you're his age and you haven't trained, you've rehabbed, but you have not trained. And in that case, he didn't even start the season until a good portion of the way in. You're not yourself. This year, he's been able to train in the summertime, not rehab. Very different.
Very different.
I think he will be a much better player. And it's not me saying that, just so everybody understands. People who train athletes for a living tell me this. Okay? It matters. So the fact he's had a full, healthy summer is going to make a difference, I think, for Max Pacioretty. And again, he if healthy, delivers reliability first and foremost up front.
Yeah,
you know more or less what you're going to get. You can rely on him. Unlike a guy like Nick Robertson, where there's still an element of hope there. He has looked good at times, but then you watch other clips from him last year where he tries stuff at the blue line that he has no business trying on a team that's looking to contend for a Stanley Cup. And it's just the straight facts. It's not an indictment on Nick. And look, I think you bring him in, and I think he's going to be able to battle. There's opportunity there still. You mean to tell me Nick Robertson can't be better than Bobby McMahon?
If it's Bobby McMahon of the second half of last season, that's the player you're getting from here on out. Maybe not.
But again, come on. If you're Nick Robertson and you say, no, I'm here. Look, for folks watching, I even have a white flag. No, can't beat that guy.
That's it.
Then that's an indictment on you. So there's opportunity, absolutely, for Nick Robertson. this year. But I like the fact that they brought in Max Pacioretty. Beyond that, you shift the captaincy to Austin Matthews. Kind of made sense. Like it's his time, I think. Yeah. They bring in a new head coach in Craig Berube. But at the end of the day, and this is what I go back to still, all of those things we talked about, tinkering on the back end, bringing in Pacioretty, change the capacity. If I don't even need to name, you know who I'm going to say, Matthews, Marner, Tavares, Nylander, do not get it done in the playoffs, nothing else matters. Nothing else matters. And so they're going to get another chance to do so. And we'll see. They're a good team. They're going to make the playoffs. And I think the biggest wild card is Craig Berube and what he's going to be able to get out of this group that maybe a new voice will help unlock. And that, again, not an indictment on Sheldon Keefe, but you know how it is. You've had a boss for 6 or 7 years. Same thing. You start to tune it out to an extent. And I think Sheldon's going to do real good in New Jersey this year.
Oh, I do as well.
But the voice, I think, can matter differently, and we'll see.
Well, the thing with Craig Berube for me is you look at it like this, the Leafs coaching cycle here, while Austin Matthews has been a part of this team. You had Mike Babcock, who was a hard-nosed kind of coach, did some underhanded things that people didn't agree with, and really didn't go well with the young players that were coming in trying to figure themselves out. Sheldon Keefe comes in, is that type of coach that does work with these guys, does do well with them, gets in their ear, it works for a while. Obviously, we all know the playoff track record. But now you have a guy in Craig Berube who's coming in, who now at this point of these guys' career probably can be that hard-nosed coach that Babcock was trying to be, probably can be the guy that pushes those buttons and gets.
And here's the thing, and I'll just stop you right there because you bring up a good point, and I want to make a point on that. The difference is that Babs was the guy that didn't really communicate to the same extent with his players. It was do it this way, don't ask why. The difference with Craig Berube from everybody that I've talked to is he will make it abundantly clear.
Yep.
It's my way. This is not a discussion here. But he will communicate with his players and say, this is why I need you to do this. Or if I cut your ice time, here's why I'm cutting your ice time. Because, and you'll pull up the video and you'll point out and say, this right here, not good enough. Not going to cut it. Yep. And so there's that level of communication there, which I think is mandatory these days. That's how I like to be dealt with by my boss. I think who doesn't like to be dealt with that? We all have bosses and they get to call the shots, but I do like to understand why that shot was called so that I have a chance to be better and to
fix the situation
right.
Move forward.
And then if you don't improve or you choose to ignore, then that, guess what, becomes a you problem again, not a coach problem. And so I think that's the big difference with Craig Berube is that he's a guy that it's abundantly clear who's calling the shots, but he also will communicate as to why that shot is being called.
Well, an interview just came out with Robert Thomas saying the same thing. Like he pulled him in the office a few times and said, hey, you're not producing, but you're also cheating.
Right.
So when you're starting to cheat and you're not producing, you're now a liability. So you can't do those little things unless you're doing everything. The cheating is more noticeable because you're trying too hard. And he'll have that conversation. He'll bring
it. Can't push you on the ice. You're not scoring and you're cheating and you're leaving us vulnerable.
Yeah.
You can't push you on the ice.
That's it. And then Craig Berube and that conversation right there with Robert Thomas makes it very clear, but communicated what the issue was. So now that player understands where he stands, what he needs to do, and go forward. And I think for the Leaf players now, they need that kind of voice. They need that kind of push, especially when it comes to the playoffs. Not someone who's going to, silk glove them. Not that Sheldon Keefe did, but he really, I don't know, maybe he didn't have that growl that Craig Berube will. And the will to sit a guy on the bench. It's the name on the back that doesn't matter. It's this in the front that does.
That's the thing. Like, and Sheldon tried at times, I think, to hold guys accountable. But it took on a life of its own in the marketplace. Like, remember, what was it? Not this past fall, the fall prior, I think, when they were out in Anaheim and Mitch Marner was benched for like literally one shift.
Yeah.
I mean,
or the things he said to the media and basically,
exactly. like, God bless everyone for even noticing that he'd missed a shift. Like, honestly, who cares? But it became a thing, and then he walked off, and so that became a thing. And then, as you pointed out, our best players just simply weren't good enough. And then the next day, well, you know what? No. And like, I get it. Sheldon was at a different point in his career than Craig Berube is at right now.
Yeah.
Sheldon's a young guy, right? He's 40 years old, whatever he is, 40, 41, 43, whatever. It doesn't matter. He's early 40s.
Yeah.
He's still worried about, where's my next job coming here, right? He's trying to still establish himself as a coach. And at the end of the day, like, I need Austin and Mitch and Willie and John on my side, because if I lose them, then I am dead. And if I accomplish nothing here, then who's to say I'm going to get it? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's got to be part of the calculus. And, like, I talk, and I'll even say the name here. I talked to Todd McClellan about this maybe 2 years ago. And it was right at that time where a bunch of former coaches were getting hired, and he was still the coach of the Kings at the time. And I asked him, everyone online likes to get their underpants in a knot when, someone else like Pete DeBoer gets hired again, or whatever it is. And, look, they're just retraining. And so I asked him, like, why do you think the same coaches get hired time and again? And he said, well, because coaches who've been around and who've done it for 20 years, they're capable, because that generally means you're 55, 60 years old.
Yep.
You're capable of making decisions in that time that you might not have been able to make when you're 40, when you're still worrying about your next job. That might been the right decisions to make at that time when you're 40. You can't, because I don't know if we're allowed to swear on this podcast.
You go right ahead, Dave.
Shit, I can't lose this guy or whatever, even though he's killing me right now. But I can't lose that guy. So I'm not going to hold him account. The same way a guy like Craig Berube, who is now at the point in his career, is he doesn't know anything. And so if you're cheating him, whether your name is Matthews or Dewar, I think he's going to hold everybody accountable the same way. You'll communicate it, but I think he will. And those are decisions that maybe Sheldon wasn't able to make early on in his tenure. At that point, he'll be a different coach in New Jersey now. He's got a new deal. He's got experience, and all of that. And I think Craig Berube will be able to make decisions now with a different group of guys who don't know him from Adam, guys who he doesn't know from Adam. They'll build a relationship, but then it'll be built on, here's the message. It's clear. We've all bought in. Yep. And if you're not following through, got to do something here.
Yeah, no, I really do think that Craig Berube will be a difference maker for this team. And I think he'll be a different maker for some players too. And also new coach, new favorites as well. There were players under the Sheldon Keefe regime, David Kampf, that was a favorite guy at certain points where people were pulling their hair out, wondering why this guy was on the ice at a certain time, whether it's after a goal was scored or a goal against, back out there yet again.
To start overtime?
Listen, I actually wanted that to happen. So I'll be one of those ones that say I thought that was a smart idea at first. He was the best defensive face-off man we had. So if you're playing the odds of saying we get possession, we swap him out for Austin, and we go down and do our thing, then that's what you're banking on. But if you get caught, I
thought it was a smart idea, because remember, that happened because the Leafs kept getting caved in overtime. Lost every game in overtime. So credit to Sheldon, he tried something different, and it kind of changed the momentum there for a period of time. And then they lost a few games, and it's like, all right, buddy, if you're going to lose some games, you better start with put your Ferrari on the road and not your, Honda Accord.
Yeah,
right?
Fall on the sword of your best player, your fourth line center.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about the fourth line center. It's not on the sandwich board, but there's some rumblings that maybe Robertson was signed because it would be easier to move him with a 1-year deal in his pocket to be able to get him to a different team because he's already on a deal. He will play this season. And if you couple him to a person you want out of your lineup, whether it's David Kampf or Calle Järnkrok I like Calle Järnkrok. My hands up, and I'm in favor of that player. I like the Swiss Army knife that he is and what he can do. But if you are looking to move David Kampf, I think having a Robertson with a signed deal for a year really could help sweeten that pot and get him out the door. And it's $2.4 million.
Yeah, like, I mean, here's the thing, right? Signing Nick Robertson will give the Leafs some options in training camp here. So if Fraser Minten comes into camp and demands a job based on his play, now David Kampf becomes a guy that you can move. They would love for a guy like Minten to demand that job through his play and earn it. And now you've got a guy in Nick Robertson who's also there at cheap, and you can move a guy like David Kampf. But what if Minten doesn't? Right?
Lawrence, so then Lawrence is there as well as a fourth line option.
Then you got to keep probably a guy like Kampf. What if Robertson's play in camp is just okay? What if he blows the doors off? So you get him into camp, and now you'll wait and this is all the coaches, managers telling me all the time, man. We don't decide, we just watch. The players decide. It's true, right? So now you got Robertson in camp. I don't think they're moving. I would be really surprised if they moved on Robertson prior to the tail end of training camp to get an idea of how everything is shaping up. Because wouldn't it be great if Robertson's play demanded ice time? Because I think he's a guy that if he corrects other areas of his game, has a quality elite shot, right? As a guy that probably can score 25 goals. The question is
14 goals last year
in limited ice time, right? The question is will he score? Probably yes, but when he's not scoring,
what is he doing?
And quite honestly, the answer was not much.
No, frustrating.
I know people get all excited about the goals, but there were a lot of games where, he'd come out, or at some point in the game, he'd have like one or two or three great shifts in a row and he'd score a goal. And before that, and then after that, he just like disappeared into the game. And if you want to play in a top six role, you can't just disappear into the game after you score. Because 14 is nice, but 14 is 14. It's not 47. Okay. And so that's what's incumbent on Nick Robertson for him now to understand that the game is more than just score a goal. But I think that's why you sign him. They've now got flexibility to watch what happens in camp. Can Minten steal a job? Does Robertson's play demand a job? Can Lawrence squeeze somebody?
All of the
I'm not convinced. I think it would be better for Easton Cowan probably to return to junior. Like I saw, he looked good at times in the showcase this weekend, but then there were some times where he flew in across the blue line, head down, got bumped off the puck, and it was a turnover the other way, and it was only Fraser Minten who was there to back check, clean up his.
That was a beautiful back check,
right? So there, and he understands that too. Is that's where his game needs to get to. If he wants to steal a job, he's got to be reliable. Because he told me whatever it was 4 days ago. I mean, I'm probably not going to make this team to score goals, right? Like they're pretty good up there. So I gotta worry about what I'm doing when I don't. I gotta be reliable. I gotta play physically. I gotta back. Like that was it in a nutshell there. And Easton Cowan's a guy that is going to be a player. I like this guy a lot. He is a good player.
Yeah.
But on that, and we know the highlight we're thinking of here. On that highlight, Easton Cowan was playing junior hockey. Fraser Minten was playing National Hockey League hockey there. So we'll see with Easton Cowan. Never rely on, it goes back to Matt Nyes last year. Never, ever rely on 19-year-olds at this time in the year until they continue to show you step by step by step of the season. And then if they get to a step where eventually it's too much, do not hesitate to put them back in a scenario that's better for them at this point in their career. He's going to be a player. I'm not convinced it's going to be this year.
Yeah, he may take some steps. He may take the Fraser Minton route of last year. They may give him a few games in his hip pocket to go back to junior with,
right,
and to chew on and have. Fraser Minton, I think, will be battling for a spot in the Maple Leafs. I do think he starts in the AHL, and they let him cut his chops there and do his thing because I think that's where he's going. He's definitely not going back to junior. I think he's done there.
He can't.
Yeah, so he will be going to the AHL. In my opinion, I think they will run with what they have up front for center-wise and stuff like that. But I think he is the third-line center of the future. I think he's one of those ones that you home grow and understands, like you said, the game. That back check was beautiful. Mm-hmm. He didn't quit on the play. He got back. He broke it up. Not only that, though, the dish to Cowan afterwards to send him. So
like that's just complete awareness where everybody is on the ice, right? Like that
speaks to the IQ.
High IQ, right? And even if he does go back to the AHL and plays 30 games, and man, you turn around at Christmas time and this guy's looking awesome in the AHL, and you've either got somebody banged up or whatever it is, he could be a guy that gets a call up at that point, and then he just he makes it clear that I'm not going back to the American League, because I think he's that kind of a player. I think he's going to be really good.
Well, let me ask you about these two players here before we put a bow on this, because I know you have an early morning coming your way, so I want to get you off to La La Land. We got JT and we got Mitch. The reason I bring up JT, obviously the C goes from him to Austin. Everything that JT said was right. Yeah. To me, I looked at it and I've said it a million times. I'll say it a million times again. It looked like he was okay with passing the torch to Austin. He even had his kids running around in Matthews jerseys with the C on. It's a nice touch. Yeah. But it doesn't seem like there's any animosity or angst or issue about this. And I'm wondering for you, did you feel the same way? You were probably present for the press conference. Did you get any in-person vibes there, or was it, hey, no, this is the passing of the torch?
No, there was no animosity. John's parents were there. His kids were there. His wife was there. Austin's parents were there. His sister was there. The families were talking amongst each other. No, I didn't get, no. It was well done. I think John understood at this point in his career, chances are we'd get to the point where it was Austin's turn to take over the leadership, because if it wasn't going to be John, it was going to be Austin. I think Morgan Riley should have had some consideration, but I'm also not.
I'm a big Mo fan for the C too.
I thought he comported himself best at locker cleanout day in the spring, where most guys are saying, we're close, we're right there, and Morgan was like, we're not close at all. We're not close at all. We can't get out of the first round, okay? But I'm not an idiot either. Like, sure, maybe Morgan would have been a good choice. I think he would have been. But if it wasn't going to be John, it was going to be Austin. So I think John was okay with that. And now it's going to be Austin's time. Look, he's essentially been the guy anyway. Yes. It's just that John's been the guy with the C on his jersey. It's not like no one's wanted to go to Matthews when things have gone awry. Of course they have.
Yeah. It's been spoken that way from Brad Treliving, Brendan Shanahan.
Right.
They've all said that he's had that leadership quality in the room. You just don't see it because it's not always on camera.
Ultimately, at the end of the day, the reason this change was made is because there hasn't been enough winning.
Yep.
End of story. If they had, gone to the conference finals a couple of times and got to the cup final one time, they didn't win it. They got to the cup final once. You're not making this change probably at this point. You let John play out the contract. End of the day, there hasn't been enough winning. So you have to change things. And so, we'll see. I don't think it's going to make a huge difference based on which person has which letter of the alphabet on their piece of laundry.
Yeah.
But, to go back to your question at the beginning, what do you make of this summer? Basically, they changed everything that they possibly could. Goaltending, D, up front,
coaching,
alphabets, coaches other than the core four. So yeah, it makes sense. It's Austin's turn. And we'll see how he contorts himself in a role.
All right, the last one here is Mitch Marner. Everybody has their thoughts here. Mitch maybe walks at the end of the year. Maybe Mitch gets traded at trade deadline for a bevy of whatever. The Leafs aren't in a good spot. I say this. Mitch Marner is going to have a banger of a season. I think this guy's going to come out guns a-blazing. And I think he is going to have signed an extension Willie Nylander style and be here for a long time. I think he wants to be a Leaf. And I think the Leafs would be foolish to walk him out the door.
Oh, okay. So yeah, no, okay. Well, look, here's what I'll say about Mitch. I do think he's going to have a very good season. He always does during the regular year. That's not in question. Question is what happens in the playoffs. That's, to me, the question. I can tell you for a fact he wants to be a Leaf long term. But I think it would be foolish on the part of the Maple Leafs right now. What is king in today's day and age in the league? Cap space is king. And they've got flexibility coming next summer with Mitch's money coming off the books, John Tavares' money coming off the books, and the salary cap likely to rise. You're going to look at combined, call it 11, 22, probably go up 4 or 5. You're looking at $27 million in cap space available right now.
Yeah.
To sign a guy long-term at big money right now who has shown you nothing in the playoffs that'll come remotely close to getting you where you want to be makes no sense. Do not sacrifice that flexibility that you have right now for a guy that has been a great Leaf, has helped turn the tide from the dark era of the early 2010s.
Yep.
But he hasn't contributed to winning. Do not sacrifice that until you see how the season plays out. And you have in your back pocket that Mitch really does at the end of the day want to be a Leaf. Tampa Bay went to the bitter end with Steven Stamkos in 2016. There have been a number of examples of teams that have gone. Florida went to the bitter end with Sam Reinhart this year. Okay? There's no reason why you can't play this season out and wait to see how it goes so that you've got a motivated guy, but you don't sacrifice your cap. And if they should lose again in the first round and it doesn't look very good, won't you be happy then that you haven't committed long-term? Because you probably want to make some changes. Maybe Mitch will have been great. Maybe someone else would have, but don't sacrifice that flexibility right now before you see how this year plays out.
Okay. I'll play devil's advocate on that. What if they go just, let's call it February.
Right.
And Mitch Marner has done a lot of Mitch Marner-y things, obviously, point-wise. But the one that I remember the most for Mitch Marner, that playoff run where he was blocking shots when Muzzin was still playing, that Mitch Marner, if that Mitch Marner somehow finds himself back on the ice where he's sacrificing the body for the block shots, doing all the small things that matter the most in the playoffs and also putting up points.
Right.
Would you be wanting to have this guy? If that guy shows back up, is that the Mitch Marner you'd be okay with being a long-term Leaf?
When? February?
If he's February and Craig Berube is saying, hey, this guy has put it back together. He's doing all the things I need him to do. He's blocking shots. He's not playing for the Mitch Marner on the back. He's not playing for his dad. He's playing for the Leaf on the front. And do you reward him or do you say, no, we're waiting until the playoffs?
Why do it then? Really? I mean, well, yeah, but I would argue Willie's been a better player in the playoffs over the duration.
For sure. I won't discount that for a second.
Okay. So, and at that point in time last year, if it was flipped around and Mitch had come up last year and Willie had come up this year, I would have said the same, get Mitch signed and then play it out with Willie. It's not necessarily an indictment on Mitch. It's just an indictment on performance in the playoffs and screwing your cap flexibility. Because if you go out again this year And what is this, year 8, 9, where you go out in the first round again? Why are you committing to the same people that have never won anything for another 8 years? Makes no sense.
That's true.
No sense. So if he's doing what you said in February, great. That's awesome. Continue, and let's see in May. And if everything goes well and they go on a run, and you grind it out, you lose in third round 6 games to a team that just got the better of you, but everybody was playing great. Yeah, fine, sure. But I don't see any reason to do that in February when you can do that in end of May, June. Yeah. I just don't see the reason to, and I don't understand fans' obsession with the feeling that it's required that everyone who is here stays here forever. Why?
I guess it's the use of being burned by players who have walked away and have gone on and done great things on other teams.
Who? Here, lately.
I look at Mason Marchment. I look at...
please, no disrespect, but Mason Marchment, nice player. Probably not crying over losing Mason Marchment, because if he was here and you were paying him whatever he's making, 4.5, okay, well, that's Matt Nice's role to play into this year, to be that. Because if Mason Marchment was here getting 4.5, well, then someone else who's making a lot of money that you like probably isn't here, right? So
watched it happen with Zach Hyman. So I get it.
Yeah, Zach Hyman is a guy that should they have made some other ancillary moves at that time? Yeah, probably. But man, Zach is a rare case of a guy who into his 30s continues to get better. That doesn't happen.
A guy into his 30s who's coming off knee surgery.
Doesn't happen very often.
I was a huge Zach Hyman guy, but those knee surgeries, to me, I was on the wrong side of 30.
I know.
I'm going to pay a guy too much for too long, and he's not going to perform.
I know. So that's the thing, right? I don't think you can really sit here and say the Leafs let Cale Makar get away. Somebody like that. No. You know what I mean? Zach Hyman, good player, really great player. Matthew Knies. Be that guy now. That's your sort of ceiling. Mason Marchment, nice player, but man, if we're going to sit here and say, holy cow, reason the Leafs never won a Stanley Cup is because remember that year they let Mason Marchment, then we're missing the point here.
Well, I just think it's some guys, though, like Carter Verhaeghe's another one that comes to mind. Good piece in Florida. Yeah,
it took him a long time, though, right? After he got dealt.
Still took him he went from there to Tampa to...
Yeah, it still took him 3 more years to really find his footing. So, yeah, I mean, that's the nature of the game. We do this with the Leafs, but we can do this with a bunch of other teams.
Oh, for sure. No, I get what you're saying. I just look at Mitch Marner, and a lot of people just say, is he a generational kind of Leaf, though? Is he, point-wise? Now, I get the playoff argument, but regular season argument for a player like that, he's a guy that gets you to the dance. But also, is he a guy that if you don't re-sign, do you use $11 million and bring two $6 million guys in?
Right.
And say, hey, now we got a more complete lineup?
Remember in Florida, right, when they were going on runs, they were winning President's trophies and all of that. You never could have thought of ever moving Jonathan Huberdeau, right? Yeah, you can't think about it. He's our guy.
Yep.
Well, they did, and it proved to be the right decision. Now, is there a guy available right now today that I would move Mitch Marner for? Probably not, right? But guys become available as time goes on when you don't necessarily expect it. So again, that's why I hesitate, because okay, so you commit to Mason or Zach. Let's say Zach Hyman. Yep. You commit to him 7 years. What is he making? 5.5. Oh, it's a lot of money, but it's not gonna sewer you. If you commit to Mitch Marner at 8 years at $12 million, right? 12.5, and he just continues to show that he's not up to the task for what you need in the playoffs, that becomes an albatross of a contract. So that's all I say. I hope he goes out this year and shows that something's clicked and there's more there when it matters most. I hope and if that's the case, you write the number down, I'll pay it. If I'm Brad Treliving, right? He'd be happy to do it if they go on a deep run, go to the cup final, win a cup, who knows? But if you go out in the first round, I think, you can still revisit and say, hey, look, Mitch was good. Wasn't his problem. We've got other areas. Our goaltending sewered us or whatever it is. And so, Mitch, we love what you did. We're going to get you signed. Perfect. Good. No problem. But let's see then. Let's not see it now because we don't know the answer yet.
See what he can do. See what he puts up and see what he goes through. Dave, I want to thank you very much. You always make time to come on, chat some hockey before the season and throughout. I'm looking forward to seeing your coverage this year, my friend. Always try to catch you when you're on the Sirius XM as well. So, again, I appreciate you making the time and jumping on with us.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what it is around here. This is Offside Hockey Talk, where the Maple Leafs and hockey come to talk.